Welcome back to Heavy Metallurgy, everyone. I'm here with Logan tonight to review the comeback album. Christian Mistress has returned after a 10-year hiatus, and we're going to talk about what they're up to right after this.
At the threshold, you lose their trace, and they say, "Come see if it's right for you. Dance to death on the other side."
Hello, folks. Logan and I are really excited to talk about the Christian Mistress album. I think a lot of folks are going to be interested to see what the band's been up to. If you're not familiar with them, don't feel bad. They've been off the scene for a little while. Logan, you want to catch people up on this band's history in case it's a name they're not familiar with?
Yeah, I can do the whole Wikipedia overview thing.
Go for it.
So this band formed in 2008. They're from Olympia, Washington. Originally, I think that's kind of where they've stayed throughout their whole career. They've released three albums up to this point, so this is going to be album number 4. The first one was Agony and Opium, came out in 2010, and that was actually a early 20 buck spin album for the label. And then after that, they jumped to Relapse for 2 albums, Possession, which came out in 2012, and then To Your Death in 2015. And boom, 10 years later, here we are, Children of the Earth, coming out on Cruz de la Sur on March 7th here in the United States.
Yep. I think and it's got a slightly earlier release date in Europe, doesn't it? Maybe
Yes.
February 28th. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a band that when they first came out, back around even that debut album, they immediately made some waves in the heavy metal underground. What was your impression of them back then? When did you kind of pick up on the name?
It was I had a pretty good first impression, honestly. I first heard them with their second album, Possession from Relapse, and it was pretty early on in me actually like understanding what the individual scenes were in, heavy metal at the time. So it was one of those first like new wave of traditional heavy metal albums to me. And I remember just really liking the dark feeling of it. Like it was heavy, but not too heavy. I mean, it definitely had a hard rock kind of 70s backbone to it. But
Oh, yeah.
at the same time, I was fine giving it the metal like tag, and it fit in with a lot of bands that were kind of just starting to come up back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. The ones for me that I kind of associated a lot with, Castle, wearing the shirt. The Devil's Blood. I know, Alan, you're a fan of that band.
Yep. Cool band.
Blood Ceremony, Jack's Thoth, and
Also cool.
hell, even Ghost, I think, would fit in that like little, because that was right
Kinda
before
good.
they blew up in 2012. I mean, and all these bands had this dark feeling to it, but then at the same time they were just flirting with very much a 70s hard rock style sound more so than a metal sound, but they still flew the flag of new wave of traditional heavy metal. And I was definitely a fan of this stuff, and was immediately interested to see what they were going to bring after a 10-year hiatus and how they were going to come back to a lot more crowded of a scene.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When they came out at first, they made some waves in the scene. They were talked about quite a bit online. Like you said, they quickly went from early 20 buck spin up to Relapse. Kind of drafted up to the majors pretty quickly for their next 2 albums. And there was just a lot of positive chatter about the band. Like you said, I think they hit at the right time when that style of traditional metal infused with a lot of 70s vibes, like you described, that sound was getting popular then. The whole new wave of traditional heavy metal thing had, started several years before that, but it felt like it was still gaining momentum. And Christian Mistress was kind of in the right place at the right time to capitalize on that and get a lot of attention for themselves. But yeah, then they kind of just fell off the map. And, they were a band I heard. I checked them out back then. I didn't keep up with them, though. And so I think for a lot of folks, myself included, I just kind of assumed they had broken up, called it a day for some reason. I wasn't really expecting to see them come back out of the woodwork at this point. So it was interesting when the promo came up. It's like, oh, okay. They have returned and they're over on Cruz del Sur now. So interesting. So we've got the background covered. Oh, Logan, what are first impressions or initial thoughts on this new album, Children of the Earth?
For me, my initial impression was that they are kind of trying to fit in within this, current scene of traditional heavy metal. They went from kind of being, I thought, like the torchbearers, and now they're trying to nestle themselves into this more pop oriented and simplistic style that kind of is permeating
Hmm.
the scene, and I think has really, popped off in the past couple years with bands like, Witch Hazel, High Spirits,
Mm-hmm. Spell.
Freeways, Spell, yeah,
Yep.
where it's even like more light 70s hard
Hmm.
rock and less metal. And the songs are more just simple, almost pop anthems than like straight up heavy metal anthems. I was definitely a little bit thrown off by that. I mean, there was definitely hints of that being in their sound, but like the average song length on the previous albums were about 5 minutes. Now we're talking 3.5, if even that. So
Hmm.
I was definitely taken aback by this generally catchier and simpler album, and even lyrically, like there's a lyric in Demon's Night, which just really threw me off and showed me that this was not quite the Christian Mistress I remember from a decade ago.
Yeah, it was good points. The songs are shorter. The album's pretty short overall. It's 8 tracks, 33 minutes, which by itself isn't a bad thing. I can appreciate it when a band does, a short, compact, really good album. But yeah, this one, in a way, it almost feels kind of rushed. Like, this is all we've got. We want to get it, put together and out there. And, well, here it is, where maybe it could have used a little more material or a little more, fine tuning. I know talking before we got started, you mentioned there were like, some songwriting choices and things, for example, that hit you in, kind of a strange way. And I've got a few of those too. Any that you wanted to point out here?
Yeah, first off, the mood of like half of this album just feels off. I The first half feels like Flower Child, like, flip flop thong sandal. And then the second half feels like the actual sword and sandal vibe that I would, want from Christian Mistress. Like lyrical and songwriting choices from tracks like Voiceless and Demon's Night and Love of the World are those are the three that really initially kind of rubbed me the wrong way. They're going for uplifting and like positively anthemic, and they kind of just come off a bit hokey to me,
Hmm.
and it detracts from my appreciation of it. And I think the fact that the songs themselves are so simple and straightforward, there's not as much to digest and to really unpack. There's still some cool riffs, and especially in Voiceless, I enjoy like a lot of the riff section of the second half of the song. But you know, just the chanting that they do. When you have a voice, use it, use your voice, like over and over again, is
I agree
kind of rubs me the
completely.
wrong word. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the early moments on that album that I don't think works because you're right. The song wants to have this very catchy kind of, like, yeah, it's supposed to be one of those big sing along, raise your fist, use your voice. But it comes across kind of flat, to be honest. And part of that is, like you said, the lyrics are just kind of simple. It's your use your voice. It's your chance. Use your voice.
And they
But
leave
also,
it.
I think the delivery's a little flat. And I hate to say that because I know Christine is a popular vocalist and a lot of folks like her. But on some of these songs, when she's delivering the chorus, like that one, she does it like in like these kind of very short bursts. Like she's more saying it than singing it. It's like, it's your chance. Use your voice. It's your chance. And as such, it comes across a little monotonous.
Hold on, there's a choice you've got to make. Use your voice, it's what you've got. Use your voice. What is the picture?
I also agree with your point about Demon's Night. There's kind of an odd songwriting choice in that one because you get close to the end of the song and it feels like the song comes to an end, and then they start back up with a different tempo for another 1 minute worth of music that's just a guitar solo, and it feels completely disconnected from the rest of the song. It's like, wait a second, is this the same song? It's one of those moments where I have to stop and look at the CD player or MP3 player I've got on screen and be like, have we moved to the next song yet? No, this is how is this attached to the other song? Again, it's just a guitar solo, but it has no nothing to do with the rest of that song whatsoever. It's played in a completely different tempo. It doesn't feel like part of the song. I'm like, why is that there? It feels completely out of place. So yeah, there's some odd choices on how these songs are delivered and put together for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. And in my opinion, it does get better as it transitions into the second half of the album, which I already said is kind of more, it feels a bit more sword and sandal epic in a way.
Hmm.
And, it all starts with Mythmaker, which is the lead single from the album. And I actually do generally like this song. I think it was a great call for it to be the lead single. It's got a strong opening riff.
Hmm.
There is a more inspired chorus that to me brings their previous album, To Your Death, to mind. And the drums actually build throughout the song. And even though it's very quick, towards the end of it, there's like double bass that comes in,
Hmm.
and it kind of swells in a way that, sounds climactic and does actually have an impact. So I think there is good songwriting on here, and Mythmaker is a good example of it, in my opinion. I do also enjoy the song Lake of Memories that comes, I believe, track 7.
Yep.
And that one is a bit more like almost progressively structured, like it kind of builds throughout it. And then at the very end, it has this kind of beautiful I guess bridge part where she's singing, Lake of Memories, and I just like how it flows, and it does sound a bit more adventurous. And
Hmm.
then I'm even a fan of the final track, Shadow. It,
Yep.
it it opens with this like epic chant, and that's kind of more of like, I wish they went more in that direction. Like that's a
Yeah.
new style for them
Hmm.
to try to employ that I think is kind of borrowed from what traditional heavy metal is doing nowadays.
Hmm.
And I think it works out fairly well. I think they could have actually done more with it, because
I agree.
even the song sounds a little undercooked towards the end of it. Like I'm enjoying it, and then all of a sudden, because they're trying to fit it in 3 minutes or something,
Hmm.
it kind of finishes.
No, I agree. That song begins, I, kind of complained before that, on some of the, vocal parts, Christina's, feels like she's, just a little lifeless. But the opening to Shadow is really nice. And, they've actually kind of feels like, they've got like a little bit of a layered vocal harmony there for the intro. And she is singing it. She's not speaking lines. She is singing lines, holding words out and sustaining some notes. And it's really good. And like yourself, I immediately thought, I was like, damn, why haven't they been doing, where's this been the whole album?
Yep.
Why weren't they doing more of this earlier? That's a really good moment on the album. And I wonder if part of it is a production question. This kind of leads into something else I noticed about the album. The promo notes that came with it, one of the first things they mention in the liner notes is that the band recorded this on a 4-track half-inch, reel-to-reel tape. And if they're only dealing with 4 tracks, that doesn't give you a whole lot to work with in terms of things for trying to like multi-track vocals or guitars or anything. And so at first, I'm thinking, okay, they just did the that kind of nice vocal effect at this one point because it's just her singing for a moment. So they had a track to spare, but as soon as they brought in the rest of the instrumentation, they can't do that because they limited themselves making it onto a 4-track. And that kind of led me to the point of like, why did they do that? You've got to have good material and it's got to be delivered well. I'm not going to, be blown away by your album just because you went super deep old school with the studio equipment you picked out. So I don't know. Did that strike you one way or the other, Logan? It may just be a little nitpicky thing that kind of irked me, but isn't really that big a deal.
I I mean, if it explains the simplicity of the album and why it does sound fairly two-dimensional at times, then yeah, it definitely was an issue. As far as like the production itself, I like the instruments. I do like the production,
Yeah, I think most of the time it sounds
but
okay, but you're right. Two dimensional is kind of a good way to put it too.
and that yeah, because there's just not as a lot of layers going on. All the individual instruments, though, I think sound very warm and like
Hmm.
there's a good room feel. I want to highlight. I think the drums to me sound great, and like the bass, I can
Hmm.
follow the bass line perfectly fine throughout the recording. It's just yeah, I wouldn't sacrifice your flexibility and your
Yeah.
ability to create more interesting atmosphere and songs for a more organic sounding production. That just is not something I would
Hmm.
prioritize.
I
So
agree. Yeah. And yeah, for using only four tracks, it does sound quite good. Everything's nicely balanced and stuff, as you said. But yeah, I can't help but think, that you probably could have really, spiffed this up some. Hey, you can compromise. Use an eight track. You can still do it on reel to reel. And you can actually have room to add a few overdubs and things here and there that would, really perk up the
I,
sound at times where it needed it. Again, shows through on those few instances they had a chance to do it. Would have liked a little bit more of that too. All right, so Logan, we've kind of got to the end of the track list. What do you think? In summary, where does this album sit with you?
it honestly to me is a little bit of a disappointment for I think the band. I mean, I'm happy that they're back, and I'm excited to see what they continue to do. Is there going to be a tour? Are we going to release more music? I mean, I am still going to keep this band in my peripheral vision and will follow them. Um, it's just not necessarily what I was looking for from them. I do think that there is a fan out there for an album
Mhm.
like this. I mean, as I said, I think they fit nicely, and Children of the Earth fits nicely with bands like Freeways, Flight, Spell, the Witch Hazels, those like more uplifting and more simply focused on crafting good choruses and stuff more so than the more traditional heavy metal leaning side of the scene.
Mhm.
And at just 30 minutes and eight tracks, I would definitely recommend people check this out just to kind of see where it fits in with the current scene, because there's a lot of competition out there in 2025 for,
Yeah.
the new wave of traditional heavy metal. And I think you'll know pretty quickly if you like this one or don't, because that's honestly another pro for it. It is kind of immediate due to how simple it is. You're going to see the pros and the cons in your mind, I think, pretty early on. So it really would benefit you to sit down and just give the full 30-minute runtime a spin and kind of see where you'll land on it. So I don't know if it'll be something I revisit throughout the year, but it is a band that I am excited to see back
Mhm.
putting out music more or less.
Yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page. It's cool that they're back. I think fans of the band will find things to enjoy on this album for sure. Um, at the same time, I feel like the scene is very different than it was. I understand why this band, made waves and was, considered, sort of like you said, a torchbearer when they were first on the scene. But man, the scene has grown a lot in these past 10 years. There are so many other very good bands working in that new wave of traditional heavy metal style that I feel like the scene has passed Christian Mistress by a little bit. And I think at this point with this album, they're actually maybe scrambling a little bit to find their place. I mean, I'm not trying to, harsh on the album. I think at the end of the day, it's an okay album. But I'm not sure okay is really good enough to help you stand out anymore. It might have worked, in the early and mid 2010s. But we were talking again before we started recording this. I can name six other albums in traditional heavy metal that have already come out just this year. We're recording this in mid-February that I think are definitely a step above Children of the Earth. You've had new albums from Ironjaw, Crimson Storm, Mean Mistreater, Savage Master and Lady Beast are both getting ready to drop albums soon. You've got Smolder coming out with something later in the year. You know, the competition's fierce. The new Sanhedrin is also coming out, just another month or so. And, I've checked out promos for all those albums. And, if I'm being honest, those are just better albums than this one overall. In terms of the whole package, those bands are a step ahead of Christian Mistress. Maybe Christian Mistress just needs an album to sort of shake the rust off here a little bit. It has been a decade. And like you said, they're doing things a little bit differently here with these kind of shorter, catchier songs that may take they may need this one album to kind of, find the right formula for that. And while I realize all of those bands I just mentioned, they do operate in slightly different styles. Iron Jaw is your classic Judas Priest kind of thing. Lady Beast is a lot more of, the traditional Iron Maiden style, et cetera, et cetera. But, there's a lot of bands like, Sanhedrin and like the ones you've named earlier, Logan, that are pretty close to the same avenue that Christian Mistress works in. And I think Christian Mistress may have a little trouble grabbing the spotlight back from some of those other bands that have really gained in popularity. They've put out two or three good albums in the past decade. And I'm not sure Children of the Earth is the album that's really going to get Christian Mistress back as leader of the pack. It's going to put them back on the map. And that might be good enough this time out. But I don't think it's going to really herald them as, the return of the king. They're back on the throne here. Again, not saying it's a bad album. I think it's a very okay album. But I don't think it's one that, yeah, like you said, I don't think I'm going to play it a ton moving forward. I'd be surprised to see it on a lot of like top 10 lists at the end of the year. I think there's just too many other good albums come out that this one's going to kind of get elbowed a little further down people's lists as the year goes on.
Yep. I mean, I fully agree with with what you're saying, and yeah, it sounds like we're in the same boat.
Sounds like, yeah. And so again, not trying to harsh on anybody. For fans of the band, we hope you enjoy it. For new fans, like Logan said, it's worth checking out for sure. It is not a bad album. It's just not a great album either. And there's a lot of bands releasing albums in this style that, yeah, if you're somebody who buys everything, or this is just your genre and you get it all and you love it all, sure, go for it. This album will suit you fine. But if you have to be a little more picky on what you buy or what you spend your time, listening to, yeah, this one's probably not going to quite make the cut for a lot of folks. Sad to say, but that is the way it is. All right, so we're going to wrap this up. Rather than just giving, a detailed shout out for one particular album as our call to arms, Logan and I have mentioned that a lot of albums in this particular vein are due to come out within the next month or two. So we thought we'd just mention a few that we've had a chance to preview early. We don't necessarily know them in detail yet, but they're making a good first impression. So you might hear more about them in a future review. Logan, what are a couple of albums you'd like to add to this kind of call to arms roll call?
Yeah, I mean, this is
roll
a good
call to arms. There we go. Got there.
It's catchy. This is a good representation of how busy this scene is, as we were hinting at before. So, first one that kind of stuck out to me would be the new Savage Master album, Dark and Dangerous. So this is coming out on Shadow Kingdom Records on March 28th. It's got a bit of a 80s pop kind of vibe to it, which I enjoy, and I think it fits with their sadomasochistic heavy metal vibe as well. So
yeah, it's
we'll be looking forward to this one.
Yeah, they're kind of a relatively simple sound, but a very fun and very catchy sound also.
And then also coming out in March on the 21st, we've got a new album by Tower with Let There Be Dark. And this band kind of made some waves with their previous album from 2021, Shock to the System. Very, very interesting album cover if you haven't seen it. But I already listened to it once, and it does sound a bit darker than what I was expecting, and it fits in nicely, I think, with the current run of albums for 2025. It's also come out on Cruz del Sur. So,
all right, and then just to kind of round out our roll call, Lady Beast returns. I think this is going to be their fifth album called The Inner Alchemist. It's coming out March 28th. And yeah, initial listens on that, really good. They're really playing up that Iron Maiden and kind of Thin Lizzy. They're really good at those, kind of, twin guitar harmonies. I think folks will be really happy with that one. And also the new Sanhedrin album, Heat Lightning, is coming out just a little bit after that. I think it's an early April date at this point. And fans of their previous work, I think we're going to be happy with the new album from Sanhedrin as well. All right, that is going to wrap it up for this review. Stay tuned to Heavy Metallurgy for more album reviews. As you can see from our roll call to arms here, there's a lot of stuff coming out that we're interested in and excited to share more details with you about. So please check back for more reviews. Logan's new to our review kind of group. He's doing a great job on the early ones. Looking forward to more content from him, Kellen, Melanie, Simon, and Marty, and all the other folks too. Until then, it's time to sign off. Logan, thanks for inviting me to review this with you. Everybody take care, and as always, keep watching Heavy Metallurgy.